Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, a major implementation flaw has been found in protected Wi-Fi, and we'll share the amazing details with you. Plus, a federally contracted think tank suffered a massive data breach, and unfortunately, needy charities were caught in the fallout. Plus, it's our end-of-year sign-off and so much more, all in this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is our Systems Network and Administration podcast. This is episode 38, and we shot this one live on December 28th and released it on December 30th, 2011. My name is Chris, and this episode is brought to you by GoDaddy. I can't forget to mention them, and I cannot forget to mention our awesome live stream, which is provided by ScaleEngine.com. Now, the other guy that joins me every single week, well, he's the tech, the teacher, and the admin. He's Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, man, welcome back to TechSNAP. This is fun. It's our last production of 2011 over at Jupiter Broadcasting. So it's kind of got like a special, it's kind of got that special moment going for it. Mm-hmm. We're going to have a faux show later tonight on the live stream, which also gets released. But this will be the final released episode of 2011 that Jupiter Broadcasting does. And it's kind of fitting because this show started in 2011. So,
yes.
You know, it's all
38 episodes in a row.
Yeah. Not a break. This is with the exception of the faux show, this is the only show on the network not taking a break for the holiday, I believe. Because, even SciBytes took 1 week off, and Lass and Stoked took 2 off. So we've been kind of lazy. But TechSNAP, no. This show, it keeps on trucking. And probably a good thing we're doing this show this week, because right as we were getting prepared for the show, Alan caught this one. It's a breaking story that it looks like potentially the New York Times has been hacked. What's going on here, Alan?
It seems that somehow the subscriber list for the New York Times has started getting emails. So the story was first reported while I was writing the show notes. So it was hard to piece together all the information, and not everything's been verified yet. Yeah,
generally we usually let the stories kind of develop a bit.
Yeah,
but this one seemed pretty substantial.
So you don't report things that are false and so on. But an email was sent out asking users to reconsider canceling their home delivery subscription of the New York Times, saying, if you stop getting it delivered to your house, you won't get free access to the full content on the website. Now, the email seemed to have been targeted to anyone that had a New York Times account, not just people that actually have a home subscription. And some people that received it reported saying that the New York Times was one of the only people that had that email address, and so it was unlikely that it was just a general spam or phishing attack. And some other people said, they got 2 copies of the email, one to an old email address and one to a new one, both of which they had at one point at the New York Times, but when they traded their account out one to the other, it seems that they didn't remove the old one from the list. Now,
why a hack, though? Why not just... Why isn't this just like a technical snafu? Because this just seems like maybe they just emailed the wrong list out to the wrong group.
Right. But at the initial response from the New York Times was saying that it was spam and that they didn't send it.
And they haven't retracted that or anything.
No. I don't know how you retract something on Twitter, but they also posted on their blog
Attempt to delete it, I suppose, and then everybody
New
just
York
goes
Times readers were inundated with false emails about their subscriptions and so on. However, once the story developed a little bit more, managed to find some people that actually had received these emails and get the headers from the email to see, was it just a spam or phishing attack where somebody just sent out these fake emails, right?
Right.
Like we've seen in the past, for example, when DirectAdmin had their list hacked and I got the phishing email. It was, you could tell from the headers that it didn't actually come from DirectAdmin, right? That it was sent from the attackers. The thing is with this one is the message was signed with their domain keys. So domain keys, or DKIM, is a system of where the email server signs emails that it sends with a private key, and then the receiving email server, for example, Yahoo, Gmail, and so on, can then check that key against a record published in DNS as a text record and make sure that email actually came from an authorized mail server for that domain.
So are they thinking somebody got into the New York Times system and then just had their own system email their own subscriber list?
Well, see, at first people thought somebody got the subscriber list and sent them this email. But then because of the domain keys thing, it's obvious that it wasn't somebody with just the list. They had to have...
They had to have sent it from the sending server, right?
And, well, the sending servers were from Epsilon Interactive, which is a marketing company that offers mass email as a service.
Probably does it on behalf of the New York Times generally.
Right. And so they would have the private keys. So, yes, the question remains whether it was a mistake or snafu where this email was just sent to everybody when it really was only meant to be sent to a certain subset of the mailing list.
Right.
Or if Epsilon servers have been compromised and somebody was sending emails. Because Epsilon has been compromised before in the past.
Oh, okay.
And so I have a link to that story in there.
Okay.
And also links to the New York Times blog where they talk about it and their post.
So it could be...
And the headers if you want to look at them yourself.
Oh, interesting. Now, it seems like to me, though, it could just be either... Well, it's pretty limited in scope, right? Because it sent an email to people about their New York Times subscription.
And it seems to be mostly to people that actually, at some point, had given their email address to the New York Times. And that's what led people to think that that list was compromised. When they thought it was just spam, then they assumed it was that the list was compromised. But now it seems that might not be the case.
That's funny.
And that's why this story is labeled as breaking, because we don't actually know what happened. It's just that the New York Times first response saying that it wasn't them means that either they didn't realize it was them or, it was a technical snafu from either their staff or the mailing list company.
Yeah. Well, we here at TechSNAP try to be very diligent about doing follow-up stories, and even if we don't make them a main story, we used to try to toss the follow-up information in the roundup in the next episode or whenever that comes out. So if you keep watching, well, we do it almost every week. So if you watch every week, you get the follow-up, and that is honestly, I won't go on about this, but that is honestly one of the things that I really want to do because that is like the number one thing mainstream media never does. And there's no reason for us not to. And we can do a good job at it. And we can focus on making sure that we keep the coverage on stories and don't just let them fade away. So if something else comes up that we seem to think fits, then we'll include it in. And honestly, a big reason why we are able to do that now is the TechSNAP subreddit. So if you go over to links.techsnap.tv, because there are hundreds of people on that subreddit that are out there just farming all of that stuff that even Alan and I can't catch everything. And then, of course, people vote on and things like that. That's a fantastic way to get follow-up stories into the show if you want to make sure we see them. And I really appreciate it. So again, links.techsnap.tv for that subreddit. Alan, should we move on to the story about GSM phones?
Yes, so moving on to the regular news.
The regular old news that just still makes you want to crap your pants. If you have a GSM phone, which is probably like...
Hold on, you're skipping a story.
Oh, I am? Oh, sorry. That might have been my bad here with the markdown. Because I had some formatting issues earlier. Oh, you're right. The Wi-Fi story, right?
Yes, bigger story.
Which it is because I actually use WDS in my house. So this really sucks.
WPS is all over the place.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this Wi-Fi vulnerability. It involves WDS specifically.
WPS.
WPS. Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. Tell me all about
protected setup.
All right. Tell me about it.
So Wi-Fi protected setup is the system they came up with because setting up encryption and everything for your wireless was too complicated for people that buy routers at big box stores. So they came up with a system where to join your device to your router or whatever, you press a button on the router and you press a button on the device and they sync up and it uses a random SSID and a random WPA password. Now, as a fallback, they had this system with PIN numbers. So written on the bottom of your device on a sticker or on a digital display on the front or in the web control panel, there's this 8-digit PIN number. And if you type that into some device, it can join your wireless network.
Okay.
And it's a lot easier than trying to deal with, like a 32-character password.
Yeah.
So the security vulnerability specifically targets that 8-digit PIN number.
Oh, man.
So with an 8-digit PIN number, you have a key space of 10 to the power of 8. Or 100 million keys, right? Because if you don't know, with exponents in the power of 10, 10 to the power of that number is 1 with that many zeros. So 10 to the power of 8 is 100 million possible numbers that you can make, right?
You just got mathed.
Yeah. However, the last digit of the PIN is actually a checksum of the previous 7 digits. And that's so that it can do validation against when you type in the PIN number and make sure you didn't make a typo. Right? There's a similar check with credit card numbers. That's why not every possible credit card number is valid.
Right.
The check was specifically made to detect when you transpose two numbers or skip a number or something like that. So again, with your credit card number, you have the same thing. It's a different algorithm, but it's the same idea of detecting when you accidentally type the number wrong. So anyway, so really you only have a key space of 7, but it's 8. Anyway, the problem is that in this attack that's described in the PDF file linked in the show notes, the attacker, when they try a password against the router, depending on the response they get when it doesn't work, they can tell whether the first 4 digits were right or not.
Oh, so interesting. Okay.
They guess a number, one of these 8-digit numbers, and then from the answer, they can tell whether or not the first 4 digits were right.
Fascinating.
So because of that, they don't have to try every possible number for the first 4 digits. They only have to try until they get the first 4 right. So what that means is that they can chop that key space down a lot, right? So now all the possible pins are narrowed down to 2 to the power of 4, which is 10,000, plus 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 4 plus 10 to the power of 3. So in total, there are only 11,000 keys.
Wow.
That have to be tried.
That's
you
not
only
hard
have
for
to try 11,000.
11,000 is nothing.
Well, it takes between half a second and 3 seconds to try each key because it's like an 8-step process. But
that seems
cutting it down from 100 million to 11,000 is basically making it 9,000 times easier.
Gosh.
Now, even 11,000 keys is quite a bit because the routers are supposed to block you after a number of failed attempts.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But turns out most of them don't.
Okay. Of course. Surprise, surprise.
Even this key space should be enough to keep the attackers out. However, it's been discovered that most of the devices don't implement any type of failed login banning or, block a MAC address after it tries too many times.
Yeah, because they don't want to get a customer support call. They don't want that scenario at Christmas morning where somebody bought somebody a Wi-Fi router and they're trying to set it up for their digital picture frame they got.
It's grandma and she can't read the number because she needs stronger glasses. Right. And but setting that number to something like 20 would still allow regular people to make a mistake a bunch of times without getting banned.
Right.
And
prevent machine abuse.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
But even if it did do MAC address banning, the attacker could, depending on what kind of wireless device they're trying to break in with, they could just change their MAC address, right? There are 2 to the power of 48 different MAC addresses, which is...
There's more MACs than there are those codes, or those pins.
So it's been observed... it's also been observed that doing rapid brute force attacks against the targeted APs can act as a denial of service attack.
Oh, sure.
Because the AP has to do all the math to calculate the next code, especially with it uses Diffie-Hellman for key exchange. And so depending on your router, if someone's really pounding on it trying to guess this number, they can actually make it so you can't log into the AP and do stuff, or that it can
consume all its CPU cycles, or
and it basically cripple your internet.
God, that sucks. Jeez.
Yeah.
You mentioned it really briefly. There is I was attempting to show some visuals from this really great PDF that's put out, and I love the tagline, when poor design meets poor implementation.
Yep.
So this is really great work.
Everybody knows that WEP encryption for your wireless is pretty useless.
Yeah.
But that's mostly a design flaw. It was implementing RC4 incorrectly or whatever, and that caused the key space to be a lot smaller than it was supposed to be. And so it was actually supposed to be stronger, but a vulnerability was found, and that reduced the strength. In this case, the exact same thing happened. By being able to tell if those first 4 digits are right, then it was able to cut the key space, by basically a factor of 10 to the power of 4.
Any vendors releasing firmware updates, or have we gotten any statements or anything on this from these guys, like the big boys like Buffalo and Linksys and stuff like that?
So the CERT advisory lists some of the vendors that they're known to be affected, which includes Belkin, Buffalo, D-Link, Linksys, Netgear, TP-Link, Zyxel, et cetera, et cetera.
So all of the ones you would find in any consumer electronics store in anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So far, nobody's announced new firmware or anything to resolve the issue. Even if they did, the people that are going to be using WPS a lot are probably the people that don't know what firmware is or how to update firmware or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of people, are shy about updating firmware because of that small risk of breaking your router.
Yeah.
Now, if you use something like DDWRT, it doesn't support WPS because it wouldn't have that code written. It wouldn't know what the code written on the bottom of your router is and so on. So it's not vulnerable to this because it doesn't do WPS.
Okay, good, because I actually that's what I use in the Linksys that I have, so it's sweet.
Right.
Okay, good.
And you can, so to work around the problem, you can go into your AP and just disable WPS. Yeah. Although then you lose the ability to just use that 8-digit code to set up your wireless instead of having to know what your random SSID is and know the random long password. Although a more random, more long password and a random SSID are always the best solution.
You know what I did? I got family members last year. I think it was last year, a Wi-Fi access point for Christmas, and I did DDWRT, just a really small minimal. They have like a minimal one, like a mini or whatever they call it, and I set it all up for them with encryption and that kind of stuff, and then gave it to them pre-configured, and just said, here, your access point name is Christmas 2010. Here's your password. Yep. Let me know when you need something. And I now need to go back and update those, but I just feel like I know that they're not using that one push button setup. And didn't you always have an instinctual gut feeling there was something insecure about being able to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, I just never trusted that.
The push button thing still pretty much works because that only is activated for a couple seconds when you press the button, but it's the pin number fallback version of that's the problem.
Well, just having that there, though. I mean, that vulnerability is there now. But I thought at the beginning of the story you were going to tell me the WDS, the wireless distribution. I thought that's what you're talking about because I do have that set up in my house. I thought, crap. Great, you're going to tell me there's something fundamentally wrong with WDS in this episode, and I'm screwed.
No, this is WPS, the Wi-Fi protected setup.
Okay, so you got technical details in the show notes, the vulnerability announcement, which is a great read because it's just like, wow, this is serious. Anything else you want to cover on that one?
No, that's about it. Just that, you probably want to disable WPS. If you need it for some reason, like, for example, I know some wireless network printers, the only option is WPS.
Okay.
To connect to the printer over USB and program it with their software. Right. But, there are some convenience factors from WPS. But, again, if you're going for convenience instead of security, then that's your problem.
And that's the TechSNAP word of the day. Or the phrase of the day. If you're going for convenience over security, that's your own fault. All right. Should we talk about this story about GSM phones? Because I know I mentioned it earlier, and everybody's like, what? What about GSM phones? Because there's a lot of people out. I can tell by the web stats, a lot of people out there have GSM phones. So, Alan,
almost everything is GSM.
Yeah, with the exception of Verizon and Sprint, right?
And here, Bell wasn't. It was CDMA for a while, but now it's HSPA.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, what's going on? So this is like something fundamentally, like, is this like a design flaw with GSM kind of a thing?
It seems like it.
Great.
So security researcher Karsten Knoll, who's known for his research into tapping or eavesdropping on mobile phone calls. I think we talked about it before, but probably not because it was about a year ago.
So he's known for being a voyeur, is that what you're saying?
Well, no, he's
known for listening to people?
Coming up with exploits for GSM.
Okay. Okay.
He's a researcher into GSM, basically.
Gotcha.
And this year at a conference, I think it was on Tuesday, so that would be yesterday, he's presenting new research which he's done, which would allow an attacker to impersonate your phone and make phone calls and send text messages as if they were you, so they would be billed to you.
Wow. Now, we covered something along this line with those little personal extenders you could get at your home. Remember that story a while ago? Is this unrelated from that?
I'm not. I don't have all the technical details because
It just came out yesterday.
even at the conference, he's not giving away all the information because
he did this on the last time he announced something. He made a big bomb announcement, and then everybody said, "Oh, that's BS. He's making it up." And then within like a week or two after that, he provided proof, and everybody's like, "Oh, okay, that's legit." So I wouldn't be surprised if he does the same thing this time.
Right. But he doesn't want to give away all the information because he wants to give the mobile networks time to try to mitigate this.
Okay.
So that
Good.
Because the idea here is that malware type people, the people that make spyware and so on, what they would do is use this to have your phone call a premium phone number or a premium text message service they have that bills you, like $2 a minute or 50 cents a text message or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so they would rack up your telephone bill to profit to them, take all the money and then run away with it before you get your bill and notice that you got charged for all these premium text messages.
And just outside of that, just think of all the uses of fraud. If you could pose as somebody, it must have something to do with the way the phone identifies itself to the network, because
Probably.
I know every GSM phone has that GSM SIM card in it, and every SIM card has like a MAC address that identifies it uniquely to the GSM network.
Yep.
So I wonder if you could somehow spoof that. You might be able to spoof the identity of that phone. You just would have to know what number to spoof.
Yep. Well, because also, like we've talked about before, GSM phones will link up to GSM network nodes that aren't encrypted, which there aren't any legitimate ones that aren't encrypted, but someone can set up a rogue one. And the idea was that the phone is supposed to notify you when it's connecting to one that's not encrypted, so you can say no, so that you don't get hijacked. But, it was found that most phones didn't implement that. And so it could be related to that as well.
Okay. Well, that's lovely.
Right. So attacks such as this are commonly executed against corporations, especially with landline PBX systems. Right. If you break into that so that you can make a call from the company's network,
right,
then you call your premium number or whatever and run up bills, or just, call your friends or whatever.
Yeah.
Call people in. Well,
it's a great way to prank you mentioned the PBX thing. If you could pose as like Sally at the front desk, you could call anybody with impunity and just talk to anybody in the whole company.
Right. Or you can call outside and make, long, expensive international calls.
Mm-hmm.
Or sell access to that to your friends on a forum or whatever. And back actually in the days of dial-up computers, it was actually a common computer virus that would infect the system and then use the modem to call the premium numbers in the middle of the night and rack up big bills.
Yeah, I used that one when I accidentally did that before I really fully understood long distance, but I was already grasping PBSs a little too well, and I claimed that's what happened because I was a little bastard. Yes. It didn't happen, but I remember those kinds of things because I was able to use that as an excuse.
Yep. So the vulnerability only affects the older 2G GSM network. So while most phones now are 3G or better, they all still have the ability to fall back to that 2G network.
To edge.
Because the 3G network has a shorter range and lower capacity or whatever. So if you're in an area that has, no bars or whatever, it's falling back to the lower GSM so at least you have some functionality.
Yeah.
And because of that, all the phones support the 2G.
Which means if there's fundamental issues baked in, they still have to continue to ship devices that support that because that's what's deployed to all the towers.
Right. So that's why the phone companies haven't moved away from GSM, even though there's better technology, because they need to support the existing old phones, and because even the current phones will fall back to 2G when the 3G isn't working. And so the researcher, Noel, said that he can use this to compromise hundreds of thousands of phones in a very short time frame. Right? We're not talking about a specific target attack,
really?
Spending a bunch of time and attacking one phone.
Hundreds of thousands?
Yeah. Now, that might be, I don't know exactly what kind of setup that we're required to do, but
hopefully more than just like a laptop.
and in a fake GSM base station, right.
Yeah.
The company he works for...
you got to have a Core i7. As long as you got about a Core i7, you can probably do about 100,000 phones.
The company he works for, which is called Security Research Labs, which is like the most generic name ever.
Yeah, I work for podcast networking. Right? It's like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's totally flat.
They have a website that ranks the various mobile providers based on how easy it is to impersonate a customer, intercept a customer's phone calls, or to track that customer as they move around. It's gsmmap.org. And so because they're based in Germany, I think, all of their data is on Europe. They cover like 11 different countries, and they have these little maps. They have a map with a little pie chart showing...
Oh my gosh, this is great.
Yeah.
So
and it shows,
can I see the U.S. in here? Let's see.
No, they don't have any data for the U.S.
Okay.
So there are little buttons at the top to switch between the three vectors.
Okay, so right now I'm displaying impersonation. Wow. T-Mobile...
T-Mobile in Germany is the safest.
Okay, so
list.
green is okay. Yeah, okay, I get
green
it.
Is good.
I see. Yep, green is good. So this isn't really. There's a lot. There is still an awful lot of red. Like
yeah. So they said while none of the networks protect users very well, they found that T-Mobile in Germany was the best so far. But they said it. A lot of these networks could be a lot better with just some software update.
I know a lot of our viewers have Orange. And
yeah.
Orange isn't doing that hot on here.
Yeah, pushing software updates to customers' phones and probably their own internal network to make them do things better and make it harder to do these intercepts.
Yeah.
So SR Labs, that runs this website here, is planning to release a data collection software that users could install on their phone to participate in collecting data and make that database have global coverage and more accurate data.
That would be great, yeah, because it really is limited now, but I mean, it's good to have what we do have.
They only have what they were able to research themselves.
Yeah.
But if you could, basically crowdsource the data collection for this, then they could get much more accurate data. And then that might be able to be more useful. Yeah. And because they're focused on Europe, they don't actually have any information on American telcos, because it would be interesting to see how, for example, AT&T compares to T-Mobile in Germany.
Yeah. Well, it would be a new interesting competitive metric for them to have to compete against each other. Who is actually keeping you more private, or who's keeping you safer? That kind of thing. Any other thoughts on that story?
No, that's about it.
All right, should we move on to, there was a back and forth this week, but then things kind of got settled when Anonymous went to Pastebin and took credit for a hack of a think tank this week. Tell me what's going on with this story, Alan.
Right. So the think tank from the U.S. called Strategic Forecasting Inc., or Stratfor.
God, what's with these crappy names?
Yeah. Was compromised by attackers who were claiming to be under the banner of the Anonymous movement. But at the same, after they announced that, we're Anonymous and we hacked this website, other members of Anonymous stated that the attack was not an official operation, and that because Stratfor is a media source publishing information about security, they're protected by freedom of the press, which is a highly valuable principle in the Anonymous movement, right? They've always been out there protecting things like WikiLeaks.
Okay,
right?
All right, okay. So
because these guys are just publishing information, Anonymous is saying that they wouldn't attack that. That's the kind of website they're for, right?
Well, Anonymous has got a real problem here, because it seems like anybody goes to the internet and just claims that they're anonymous, and then they can claim they're responsible for anything.
Yeah. Now, when you actually look at the Pastebin, it doesn't say Anonymous anywhere on it. All it says is Anti-Sec and lulz Xmas. Now, if you remember, lulzsec and Anti-Sec is a separate movement that at times were affiliated with Anonymous or had the same goal, but they aren't actually the same thing. So it may be just that the media falsely attributed this attack to Anonymous, right?
Okay.
Because, the people that work at newspapers probably have no idea what any of this is and just think that, whenever an unknown hacker attacks something, that's anonymous.
Right. Yeah. Maybe you might be right. They're just almost becoming synonymous with hackers.
Right. And in general, Anonymous is always going to suffer this problem because they're anonymous. Anybody can claim to be part of them, or they can claim anybody is not part of their movement, right?
Now, they actually ended up getting this think tank or whatever got their client list leaked, and even with phone numbers on here and whatnot.
Yes. So Stratfor has suspended the operation of its website. If you go there, it just says, the site's under maintenance, and its email. Yeah. And they took down their email as well. Because the attackers, when they broke in, managed to obtain the credit card details, plain text passwords, addresses, and a bunch of other information from the Stratfor private clients list. At first, that list was released as 4,000 names. I have a pastebin of that. But the attackers claim to have stolen more than 200 gigabytes of data.
Yeah, that's
including all of the emails from Stratfor.
I mean, they went all out. I mean, they include some. Have you seen some of these screenshots they posted of people's orders and all kinds of stuff?
Well, the orders is something separate.
Oh, okay. This is pretty intense stuff.
Yeah. Lost my place here. So the goal of this Lulz Xmas campaign, was that using the stolen credit cards, they were going to donate $1 million to charities.
Oh, how'd that go?
Using the stolen credit cards.
Aren't they just the Robin Hoods?
That's what the receipts that you see in the pictures are, is them proving that they made donations using stolen credit cards.
So they did it.
Yes. Now, the problem there is that the fraudulent charges will be charged back, right? So, if somebody used your credit card to donate to a charity, and you say, well, my credit card was stolen, the credit card company is going to take the money back.
That sucks.
And usually there's a fee involved with that. And even if there's not, it takes time to process do all the paperwork. So the charities probably end up losing money when the hackers do this.
Oh, way to make a stinky... That's too bad.
No,
at first I was like, well, that's kind of awesome. But then I was like, that kind of sucks.
I'm sure the people that did this thought it was an awesome idea and just didn't realize, because they don't know any better, that, this is actually going to have a net negative effect on the charity rather than what they had intended.
It kind of speaks poorly about the level of thought they're giving these efforts.
The amount of organization going on. Yeah. So other Twitter posts from the attackers claim that the total number of stolen credit cards was in excess of 90,000.
Jeez, okay.
So they posted so far 2 different lists. The first list was just shy of 4,000. But then they posted 13,000 more. So we know they have more than just the 4,000 cards.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is that the data that they posted included the CVV values, that 3-digit code off the back of the credit card number.
Which they shouldn't have been storing.
Exactly. It's against the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS, to store that specifically so that when a database is compromised and somebody gets all these credit card numbers and expiry dates and the name on the card and everything, they can't go somewhere and use... online, you can't go and use that credit card to buy something because it'll ask you for that 3-digit code.
What kind of reason would they have to even store those in the first place? Like, I've worked on so many projects where that's just like so well known, it's not even really talked about. You just don't store that.
It's supposed to be part of your audit when you process credit cards.
Yes.
That you do not store the CVV value specifically, so that when you get hacked, they won't get that value, and then the cards, while they're not useless, any site that requires the CVV value can prevent themselves from being the target of this fraud, right?
Right.
If those CVV values had not been in the database and the charities required the CVV value to make a donation, those charities wouldn't have lost the money, right? They wouldn't have got the chargebacks. They wouldn't have got the possible chargeback fees, because
it all could have been stopped at the source right there.
Yes.
So it's funny how often that is, and the reaction will be one of about the hack and the technical measures that can be done and things like that, and we have insane responses like SOPA because of things like this. In reality, if you trace it back to the source of the money and nip it there, then there wouldn't have ever been the motivation for it to happen in the first place.
Well, this company shouldn't have been allowed to process credit cards because they were violating the PCI DSS.
Yeah, exactly.
The reason why this thing exists.
Yeah, exactly.
We've talked about before how the PCI DSS is limp-wristed and not very useful.
Yeah,
it's nowhere near strong enough, but yet people can't seem to follow even the basics.
Yeah, and that's so funny. You put it so well, because it's not even strong enough at its current level, and they're not even following its current implementation.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous because we have a right as consumers to have information protected, especially if they're going to continue to push us down the path of going more and more digital with our way of payment.
And also, this company is claiming, a security company, and they do analysis, and they're basically a private label, spy agency almost, right? It's their job to find out information and summarize it and analyze it and give it to companies to tell them what's happening and what to expect. And they were storing users' passwords in plain text.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
And it seems that for most of the accounts, for a lot of like the company accounts, the password was the company name.
No! No!
So when Anonymous pasted it into Pastebin, it seems the passwords were MD5 hashed. It's not clear whether Anonymous did that or if that's how they were in the database.
Oh my gosh.
But if it, as we've talked about before,
MD5 might as well be clear text. I mean,
right. If it's just straight MD5, you can rainbow table that in a matter of seconds.
a rainbow table that bish. That's I believe what they say as they do it. Because there's just like we've talked about on this show, there's just databases online that let you do that. You don't even have to. You don't even have to really try that hard.
Rainbow table. you can download big rainbow tables and have them standing by and literally break thousands of passwords a second.
Idiots.
Well, so yeah, the credit card numbers probably should have been encrypted.
Yeah. Okay.
The CVV shouldn't have been stored at all.
Right.
The database probably shouldn't have been part of this main website, although it seems their entire infrastructure was compromised because they got the email server and everything. It's not clear whether this company has only just the one server or if they did island hopping or what, but it seems they had ineffective security in the first place.
I am blown away by this.
Passwords should have been cryptographically hashed. Come on.
At least they have like government clients and, small time things that it's gosh. I mean, even the disclosure of their own clients is probably a massive breach.
Yeah. So Stratfor describes itself as a strategic intelligence for business, economic, security, and geopolitical affairs.
Oh.
Right.
Geopolitical.
And they said that they're working with law enforcement to attempt to apprehend the attackers. And then we got a couple of quotes from them here. Stratfor's relationship with its members, and in particular, the confidentiality of our subscribers' information, are very important to Stratfor and me.
Oh, you think?
Chief executive of the company. Well, if it was, maybe you would have encrypted something.
I mean, it's like they weren't even trying, man. It's like they weren't even trying.
Even a little bit. And another quote, contrary to this assertion, the disclosure was merely a list of some of the members that have purchased our publications, because they sell like publications that you can buy, and does not comprise a list of individuals or entities that have a relationship with Stratfor beyond their purchase of our subscription-based publications. Well, what other kind of relationship is there than they buy your analysis?
I don't.
So your company sells analysis, but you're claiming that the list of people that buy your analysis is not the only relationship you have with people. It's it's bad enough.
Yeah. It's weak. That's weak. Okay. Well, so there's some additional links, including links to the Pastebin and the screenshots of the donations. If you guys want to see that in the show notes, Alan, do you have any other thoughts on that one?
Just that people need to hash their passwords.
I know. You know what it is? Not enough people watch TechSNAP. Folks, you got to go share the links. You got to share the TechSNAP love with people so we can educate the world. Because, come on. It's got to get out there. Also, I don't usually ask too often for this, but if you are an iTunes user, we don't have a lot of you who will admit to it. So I need all of you to stand up and say, I am an iTunes user. And if you're in iTunes, go over to TechSNAP in their podcast section and rate and comment, because the thing that does is it helps. That's how the iTunes system brings other shows to like the top people's search results and stuff. So it helps people find the show, which is always a good thing. All right, Alan. Now, we don't have a feedback this week. We do have quite an epic roundup. But before we get to that, I want to say holler to the folks over at GoDaddy.com. Now, GoDaddy.com has had a bumpy end to their 2011, but they have been all right. I mean, boy. But they're trying to make good. They're trying to I think, reach out to the internet community. We'll see how it goes for them, but they have been a fantastic supporter of JupiterBroadcasting.com. I am extremely pleased to see that they've not just repealed their position on SOPA publicly, but also gone to the congressional level. Even despite the holiday weekend, they managed to get through to Congress and get their official SOPA support removed from the congressional hearing on a Monday, which is pretty awesome. So go over to GoDaddy.com. It's 2011. It's almost over, and there's deals that can be had still, so get there and buy your domain now if you've been thinking about it. One that I want to tell you about is kind of a fun one because, actually, it's just kind of one you might want to be safe with too, but it can be fun, and that is the .XXX domain. We've got a deal if you want to buy the .xxx. They just recently opened that up. Now, you might just want to have a really, I mean, I won't be judgy here, so that's fine. But the other thing you might just want to think about is identity and brand protection. Like, I honestly should go over and buy jupiterbroadcasting.xxx just so that way somebody else doesn't grab that. So you can do that, and if you want to grab a .xxx domain right now, you can get 20% off if you use the code TechSNAPX when you check out. And that's not a bad way to go, too, because if you're gonna have to do something where it's one of those purchases that you just want to do just to protect and keep the domain name safe, and you don't actually plan to use it that much, might as well get a little money off when you do it. So use TechSNAPX when you check out. You can also use TechSNAP7 to get a domain for $7.49. That's Alan's favorite deal right there.
Yep.
That's a domain that's cheaper than a burger. Not a very good burger. Well, no, you know what? Five Guys burgers, it's cheaper than a Five Guys burger, and that's a damn tasty burger. So think about that. And then something else is you can get 10% off any purchase over at GoDaddy.com if you use the code TechSNAP10 or use the code TechSNAP20 to get 20% off shared hosting. So there you go.
Yep.
And thank you to GoDaddy for the support of TechSNAP and the support of the Linux Action Show. They're keeping the network going. Now, Alan, with the news out of the way, with the GoDaddy mention out of the way, I kind of feel a storm coming. The kind of storm that only comes once an episode. That's the roundup! It's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are the stories that didn't quite go in the main section of the show, but we still wanted to talk about them, give you a link to do a little more reading on your own, and often are powered by our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Now, Alan, at the end of this week's Roundup, I almost went and revealed it. I'm going to reveal the Christmas present that Alan got for me. Alan, do you want me to? I could also go get the Christmas present that I got for you if you want to see it, because I haven't shipped it yet.
Sure.
You want to see it? Okay. So I'll do that while you read one of the stories, so you'll have to let me run off and just keep going while I go get it, because it's in the other room. Unless, well, actually, maybe my wife's watching. Maybe she can grab your gift. Okay, so let's get into the Roundup. Our first story is one that is a little maybe taking a little bit of chunk out of the heart of Apple lovers, and that is Apple was recently fined some pocket change. I believe they had to go over to Tim Cook and shake him vigorously to make this fall out of his right pocket by Italy for misleading customers about warranty terms. This is actually, it's 900,000 euros, so about 1.2 million US dollars, for failing to inform Italian shoppers about their legal right of 2 years of technical support.
Right. So in Italy, there's a law that says that companies have to provide 2 years of technical support when you buy a product. Now, Apple's default warranty is 1 year.
Yeah.
And so after that 1 year, they were asking customers to pay for support when they're legally required by Italy to continue to support for free.
Oh, really? See, I misunderstood. I thought they were just getting in trouble for not telling people about the extended warranty.
I know, and this one is by not telling them that they should have got 2 years for free, they convinced people to pay for support for the second year when they didn't need to.
Gotcha. Well, you know, I've never liked that about Apple, the fact that, like, a lot of times when you buy a Dell, you get 3 years warranty support. When you buy a Mac, you get a year, and then if you buy within that first year...
Because they expect you to buy a new one every year.
Well, there's that. In that first year, if you buy Apple Care, which is their warranty, then you get for another 2 years, but it's usually like 10% the cost of the machine. I mean, it's kind of high. It's really expensive. And for being such a rich company, I'm surprised that the people haven't leaned on them more about that. Now, I don't know. We'll see. People respond with their wallets, right?
Yep.
Okay, now Siemens has got a story here on the Roundup. You want to take this one?
So this is a follow-up to one of our biggest stories from last week.
Yeah.
About the Siemens having the default password of 100 and so on and so on. So Siemens has publicly admitted that there are these security vulnerabilities, including the authentication bypass, which they had previously claimed didn't exist. After the U.S. Department of Homeland Security issued an advisory warning all critical infrastructure operators and other people that use the Siemens system to make sure that their Siemens systems were not reachable from the internet, because that would expose them to this risk. Because if you remember from last week, it was not only the fact that the password for the web interface was 100, but there was also a password for the VNC interface that was 100. And if you changed one, it didn't change the other.
I couldn't believe that story.
Yeah. And so now that the Department of Homeland Security has issued an advisory about it, Siemens has basically gone back to their stance that the security vulnerability does exist.
Oh, good.
Whereas last week we were covering the fact that they had said, no, there's no such vulnerabilities. So, yes. It's in the most obvious of statements ever, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security says, make sure your SCADA systems are not plugged into the internet.
Thank you for that excellent implementation support there, Siemens.
And Siemens is expecting to release their first security update and fix for some of these problems late next month.
Okay, good. I'm glad they're getting right on top of it. Late next month. Okay. All right, so the next story on the roundup, just a quick mention, a new version of pfSense is out. I'd heard from some of you because we had talked about pfSense a few weeks back, and a lot of you said, I'm waiting to go to 2.0. I just like to really, a lot of you old school guys, and I'm there with you, so I totally understand.
Nobody wants an ODA release, right?
Yeah, that's just that 1 point release to smooth things over, and that's exactly what pfSense 2.0 is. Now, we talked about 2.00 when it came out, so this is just an update to that. And one thing you might like if you're a big geek is they now have DNS load balancing, which could be kind of cool. They also have extended support for PPOE.
Point over Ethernet.
Yeah.
Which is what most DSL is.
Yep, exactly. They have improved support for that, especially if you have multiple DSL lines with one default gateway and things like that. So go check that out. New release of pfSense.
Was up here in Canada where we had the problem we were talking about last week where Bell Canada, which is the incumbent provider, which resells or wholesales their internet access to smaller companies to sell you DSL. When they implemented that capping and traffic shaping, one way around that was to bond multiple PPPoE connections together.
Okay.
Right? So each one would be shaped to 32 kilobytes per second, but if you ran 8 of them, you would get more speed. And so support for that kind of thing in pfSense became very popular.
Yeah, okay. And so now they've...
Because, again, it was something you could do in pfSense that you wouldn't be able to do in your regular off-the-shelf router.
And free. It's free, people.
Yep.
The next story on the roundup is kind of a funny one just on the surface, but it's really not that funny when you get into it. But Subway was hacked, and in fact, hacked at their teller stations for like the tune of $3 million. Alan, did you see this story?
Some of it, yes.
Yeah, now this is one of these where I think it's funny because Subway is not handling the PR side of it very well. They are being very tight-lipped. They're claiming they don't want to give people a blueprint on how to hack their network. But it sounds like it might be related to just like really bad security practices by the franchises.
Yep.
I don't know all the details, but it sounds like somebody was able to get through remote services and get like access to the teller systems.
Right. So some of their point-of-sale systems, which if I recall correctly are just Windows XP running some software, well, they had, it doesn't say which, but something like VNC or just the regular Windows Remote Desktop enabled by default or on the image they deployed to all their machines. Now, apparently that either had a default password or an insecure password, which again is a violation of PCI DSS. Having any kind of remote control system on the point-of-sale terminal is, it shouldn't be there, and it definitely shouldn't have a default password. That's like rule number 1 or 2 of PCI DSS.
The live chat's even saying that some of the Subway franchises they go to use Windows 2000. So you could be looking at something that's significantly more insecure here, turned on by default. So this is a big deal.
Yeah, and so basically the attackers managed to install a Trojan that prevented any further security software updates. Not that the point-of-sale system probably has Windows updates turned on anyway. And all kinds of things like that.
Yeah. So that's a good read. Ars Technica has a great write-up on it. Link to that in the show notes if you guys want to check this out. Now, this story I followed as soon as the moment it broke just for this show, and I'm really, it's an interesting cycle. So an announcement came out that Chinese, am I jumping ahead here? Chinese school linked to Google attacks, also linked to 001 attacks on White House. The site. This is a different story, but it actually fits in almost perfectly with the story I was about to cover, so I might want to link these two together. There's a story that also came out about the Chinese government attacking the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And
so there was an attack, and Chinese hackers were accused of breaking into the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
And then the Chinese government saying that they weren't responsible for it and that they are under the same type of attacks.
Yes, exactly. Now, I thought that was fascinating because we've seen a lot of stories on the show, and I'm kind of being retrospective since it's the end of 2011, but a lot of these type of attacks have been blamed on the Chinese, and then we see short after that, the Chinese will come out and say, we don't have anything to do with those attacks. And now this time the Chinese are saying, not only do they not have anything to do with these attacks, but they're actually under the same kind of attacks.
Yeah.
What's interesting, too, is the article goes to point out that the attackers seem to know right where to go and were using sophisticated means and what data to go after, which to me almost implies more like a homeland attack, really, because we're,
possibly, but again, with the target being the Chamber of Commerce.
Right. But
that's
to have
something
that kind of knowledge of where to go and what systems to work around, that seems like insider stuff to me.
Depends. Well, if you have something like Dooku or something where you're collecting intelligence ahead of time, then you know exactly which doors to go through.
And if they're using some sort of standardized program that a lot of people use, then you just have to identify the vulnerabilities in that and then attack that. So
it's just
like
that kind of commercial intelligence and finding out about what other companies are doing and what the U.S. government's plans are as far as trade policy that's really only useful data if you're another government that's trading with the U.S.
Now, there's another story in here about one attacks on the White House being linked to the Chinese. Did you want to talk about that one?
Sure.
Okay, because I didn't read this story, so I'll let you cover this.
I didn't read it either.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then we'll
Actually,
skip that one.
It's not even in the show notes. I don't know where you're finding it.
Oh, okay. It might have been because during the break I was doing some more research on that last story we just covered. So I think it was related to that. All right. Well, this one I will let you cover because I think this is right up your ballpark. This one it was a little present from the FreeBSD security team this year, wasn't there, Alan?
Yes. Colin Percival like to be a little cheeky, and so on December 23rd, I get this nice little email that says, "Hi all, no, the Grinch hasn't stolen the FreeBSD security officer's GPG key. Your eyes are not deceiving you. We really just did send out 5 security vulnerabilities on the day before Christmas."
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, what happened?
Yeah, so he says the timing, to put it bluntly, sucks. Normally, they try to release security vulnerabilities on a Wednesday so that people have time to fix it before the weekend. And in this case, the 23rd was a Friday before Christmas. But the vulnerabilities were important enough that they had to get out as soon as possible. The most important one was a flaw in Telnet-D, so the Telnet server.
Okay.
Luckily, almost nobody uses that. Anybody who does should probably be smacked upside the head a couple times. That's your own fault
if you're still using Telnet, people.
But there was a remote root vulnerability, which would allow someone to actually compromise the system and get root access.
Yeesh.
So that's a big one.
Yeesh.
So again, that prompted them to not wait and to go,
it's funny because one of the stories I held back for the roundup was a story about how Microsoft is withholding important patches for the month of December. And here we have the complete polar opposite where FreeBSD guys are like, we're sorry, but we're going to put these out the day before Christmas if we got to because it's important.
Right. Well, because, if nobody wants to get their box hacked over Christmas.
Yeah, so it's just a pretty interesting contrast.
If you were warned ahead of time, you can all right, Telnet is off until after Christmas when I can fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else kind of major scare, or is that the worst one?
There was a couple other ones. There's the problem with chroot. There was the FTP one that we talked about a bit. I think we talked about it before on TechSNAP. But basically, if you put certain files in a chrooted home directory, you could trick it into to executing your own binary. So if you had an FTP user, you upload your own exploit code, and then you upload a little config file that tricks it into loading your exploit code. And so all those vulnerabilities have now been fixed and published so that people can get them from FreeBSD update.
Like TechSNAP always says, patch your crap.
Yeah,
patch your crap.
And then the other one was a fix for libc to deal with the chroot thing. And because of that, it affects a huge number of files. So when you do an update and you notice it touching a lot of files, that's not actually a problem or anything. It's actually supposed to be doing that. While it's irritating, it's required.
Prepare yourselves for that.
Yeah.
All right. You want to talk about this data center?
Yeah. So in Norway,
Fjord? Is it Fjord, Alan? Did I get it right?
Yeah, Fjord.
Thank you.
So they're building this data center in Norway and claiming it's the world's greenest data center.
Okay.
Because it's cooled by the fjord rather than having to have regular cooling.
Oh, that's interesting. We're seeing a lot of these really green data centers, like the Facebook ones and stuff like that, are way outside the U.S.
Now, again, the idea here is not so much to make it green, because while that has some business value, it's not that important. But the fact that you could save a lot of money on having to buy giant air conditioners and power them and redundantly power them and maintain them, that's a significant savings, right? Because on top of just the idea of, buy these big expensive air conditioners, buy more of them than you need so you always have spares, and run them all the time, right? Which takes a lot of electricity and so on. There's a lot of maintenance involved. Like, for example, at our data center, they shut the air conditioning down once a month and have to use little portable coolers and do maintenance to make sure that the air conditioning doesn't break down, right?
Yeah.
Well, that means having air conditioning guys come in once a month for a couple of hours and work on it. Again, that's another expense. Whereas if you can cool it based on, geographic stuff that's already there, then you save all that money.
Well, and really, don't you think that's going to be how green technology is the most successfully implemented, is when there is such a strong business case for it? Because businesses are going to be businesses, and they're not going to do something just because it's good for the earth. They're going to do it because it's good for the bottom line.
Some end consumers will make their purchase decision based on how green something is, but businesses, while they may want to do that, really it comes down to a business case, right? It's like we're fine with the not green one if it saves us a lot of money.
Yeah, and I'll just leave on this note. They're already attempting to measure the global percentage of power that data centers use, and so they're already starting to calculate what kind of impact that these systems make on such a massive scale. So if we can reduce the impact as we're going to have more and more services go cloud-enabled, so larger and larger data centers, that's kind of a necessity, really.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this Chinese developer forum, which leaked 6 million user credentials.
Yes.
I can't even believe that, Alan. 6 million user credentials.
So this is some big forum they have, and it's just a forum like any other, and was focused on Chinese developers, people that wanted to write cell phone apps or computer apps or whatever. And apparently, if you registered on that forum before sometime in 2010, your password was stored in plain text.
God, what the heck?
Yeah. Now, I've seen systems like this where they've tried changing your password hashing or encryption system can be really complicated. It was actually something we did at GeekShed. Now, our passwords, we had already moved away from plain text long ago.
GeekShed is the IRC service.
Yes, the IRC service where the chat room for Jupiter Broadcasting is. Now, we have basically, when we decided to switch from MD5 to SSH for hashing, we went from plain MD5 to cryptographic SSH so that it has a salt. The issue was that with the MD5, you don't know what the plain text is, right? So the way we did it was the next time you logged in, when we had the plain text to test it against your MD5, when you successfully logged in, it rewrote your password in the database in the new hashing algorithm.
I like that.
Now, that left some people that never logged in such that they would never have their password upgraded.
Right.
But we have a policy where if you're not there for 90 days, your account gets deleted anyway.
Oh, okay.
So other than a few accounts which were set to not expire.
So note to self, don't ever go on a 90-plus day vacation because otherwise Alan's going to boot me out.
Yep. So we had to deal with a similar issue, and it seems that if you had a plain text password, just left you with a plain text password rather than causing that upgrade path. And if not, then the 6 million credentials that they managed to make off with are all accounts that haven't been used in a significant amount of time.
Right.
Although those type of people might be the ones that didn't change the password since 2009 or whatever.
But again, you're not changing your password. If you're using Telnet, and what was the other thing? Oh yeah, you're hitting the easy button. Well, that's all your own fault, right? I mean, I have a video on LastPass, an in-depth look. That if you guys are, because that's one of the things I should say. Over 2011, I really rampaged on passwords, and I said I was going to make a video. If you watched back over the 38 episode span of this show, I probably said I'm going to make a video on this a dozen times. I finally did it. So go watch that, people. Alan, any other thoughts on that one?
The other interesting thing that came out of that story was an analysis of the most popular passwords.
Oh, goody! I love that.
Yeah. So there's a little GitHub pastebin link here. And the most popular password by far was 123456789.
Yeah.
Followed by 123456788 and 111111111.
I love you made it at where was it? I just saw it go by. I love you made it at line 26. Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With 30,000 out of the 6 million passwords. But the 123456789 was basically 250,000 of the 6 million. It's a lot of people. The other interesting one was the password Dearbook. I don't know where that comes from, but 46,000 accounts were using that as their password.
Yeah, I actually thought it was kind of interesting that 892 were just using the password KingCom5. Not King Kong, but KingCom5.
Yes. Now, some of that might be something like spam bots that, they wrote the thing and it all uses the same password or something. But it just seems like there's quite a few that don't make any sense. And there's also a couple in here with over 3,000 entries that maybe mean something in transliterated Chinese, but they don't mean anything to me. It looks like random letters.
Yeah, it could be.
But it just seems unlikely. Now, some of those might look like just mashing the keyboard in the right pattern.
I like Project Morris's comment in the chat room. He says, awesome, these guys are our developers.
Yep.
Oh, Project Morris.
ASD.
I'm itching to show you your Christmas present. So are you all done with this story now? Because I want to show you the present.
I think that's it.
All right. So I got, first of all, I want to say thank you to Alan because he sent both Alan and my wife a gift this year. And this is actually really cool. He got me the ThinkGeek Magic Geek Ball. What a great way to spend our last produced episode of 2011 is talking about presents we got each other. This is actually really cool. So should I ask it a question? Okay.
Sure.
Let's ask, Magic Geek Ball. Will 2012 spell certain doom for the world? Let's see what we go. Little shake here. RTFM. Well, that doesn't help me. RTFM, that doesn't help me very much. Well, I'm gonna have to Google that one. All right. So you want to see what I got you? Now the first one. Okay. Now I ran off while you were talking about one of the roundup stories, and I grabbed. Now the first one is a Jupiter Broadcasting sweatshirt because
awesome,
right? It's Canada, and I know it gets cold, so
it does.
Yeah. So here's your shirt. Which you can see how well I wrapped it, right? You really like that? So what happened was I got sick. I was going to send all these out, but then I got sick, and then the holidays came, and then I didn't. And then I'm doing a show. Yeah. So there you go. Okay, now your other gift is still it's wrapped. So do you want me to open it, or do you want me to ship it to you? You want me to open it? I can open it right now. No?
No, actually, I would be surprised that way.
I'll ship it to you. That's good too, because I got the same thing for Heather, so I don't want to spoil it. But
cool.
It's in there. It's all wrapped up, and we'll have it mailed out soon. It will not blow up. The chat room must. Why would I want to? Then we wouldn't have a TechSNAP in 2012. How would I? Why would I want to blow him up? Actually, what I ought to do is just send you a whole box of like caffeine pills or something. You know what I'm saying? We'll make it a 3-hour TechSNAP, but it'll go so fast you get it all done in 45 minutes because of all the caffeine. All right. Now, I know it's a bit late, guys. I know I got to get it mailed out. See, I was sick. I actually am still kind of sick. You can probably hear it a little bit.
Yep. But if you decided to send it anyway, I would have not been home and it would have been a pain anyway. So, dear Magic Geek Ball, dear Magic Geek Ball, like I'm being like it's like, Magic Geek Ball. Will Alan like his Christmas gift? Let's see here. Turn it over. It says, "Oh really?" Oh really? That doesn't tell me anything. I think that thing's rigged. I was actually thinking we could make a bit though out of this on Last. Like when we get some sort of story that like it's like just got like who knows where it's gonna go. We could just we'll ask the Magic Beep. Oh, this time look, I got a frowny face. We can ask it questions on Last, and maybe it'll be like the third co-host. All right, Alan. I think that's just about everything, right? Yep.
Now, I just want to say I have had a blast all 2011. When did we start this show? Do you remember what month we started TechSNAP?
April, I think.
That's what I want to say. So we're not at a year yet, but I definitely feel that
Angela figured it out because she was doing a retrospective of 2011 or something.
Yeah.
And she had all the dates written down. Because she was asking me, and I looked some of them up.
It's definitely been one of the highlights of my 2011. I've absolutely enjoyed doing this show.
I've had a lot of fun doing this.
And it's been a great show for the network, and it's been, fans have loved it. Yeah, let's see here. April 18th, 2011 was our first. So pretty much at the start of 2011, but not quite. And it's brought us quite a way. So thank you to everyone who's downloaded and watched the show and commented and subscribing to the RSS feeds and all of those things. We really appreciate you guys out there. We've loved the response this show has gotten in 2011, and I think we're just going to keep on rocking it in 2012. Yep. And so far we haven't broken our streak yet. We've made it every single week since we started, which is awesome. So we've sometimes done it a couple days early, but that still counts because it still releases on Friday.
We've never been more than one day early.
No, we keep it usually. That's best for the news cycle too.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. But the show does release every Friday morning over at jupiterbroadcasting.com, and there's RSS feeds where you can get it in HD, you can get it in tablet form, you can get it for your mobile device, or you can get an audio only for you commuters if you don't watch video when you commute, which you probably shouldn't, because I've actually heard from some of you who do. I got a buddy who was riding with his buddy who watched Jupiter Broadcasting, and he watches it on like a video device when he's driving, which I'm just saying probably not safe, but extremely hardcore. That's all. That's all I'm saying. I'm not judging. I'm just impressed. I guess that would be a little bit judgy. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning into all of 2011 of TechSNAP, but every single week of TechSNAP, and we'll be right back here next week.